Vanderbilt's defensive line will anchor the line of scrimmage in 2025. Man, I am so excited for this.
You are Locked On Vandy, your daily podcast on the Vanderbilt Commodores, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Locked On Vandy podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Corey Burton. Thanks for making Locked On Vandy your first listen each and every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Shout out to the everydayers, and however you got here, however you're listening or however you're watching, thank you so much for being here, man. It's going to be an exciting show on the Locked On Vandy podcast here. And this episode is actually brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. So, like I said, it's an action-packed episode, man. And to start off the week, we reacted to the scrimmage. We talked about what happened offensively, and we really were excited about the things that are happening on offense. I'm excited about it. You are too. But I didn't get a chance to talk about defense because the defense is going to be, I think the defense is going to be outstanding. Truthfully, I think there's a lot of things going right with this defense. I think there's a lot of things going well in the Steve Gregory era. I think there's a lot to be excited about. First things, the defensive line is going to be dominant in the trenches. You got to love that. The linebacker room is as deep as it ever been. Dontae Carter's making some noise, and then also team wide. I think there's some competition at the safety position is kind of really where I was going with that. But, team wide, this is probably the most people that have been put on these award watch lists. I'm excited, truly excited about that. I think there's a lot of good players in a lot of good places. So we'll talk about all of that. But let's talk about the line of scrimmage, okay? We talked yesterday about the offensive line. They're taking shape. Things are going great over there. I think they've got their 5. They're starting to develop their rotational guys as well. So on that side of the ball, it's going to be phenomenal. Now, defensively, I think the depth is there. I think there's a lot of great rotational guys, a lot of great situational guys on that side of the ball. And, you have to wonder what's going to happen with this position group and what's going to happen with this defense as a whole. Coming into this season, the main thing was getting pressure. The main thing was trying to find guys that could rotate in because you just ran out of gas as the season went on. Teams were able to run the ball on you. You weren't able to get much of a pass rush without a blitz. So there's a lot of things happening within that defensive line that I think you have to really pay attention to. One of Clark Lea's focuses was getting and adding that defensive line depth. One of the things he wanted to do was be able to get pressure from the inside, be stingy on the run, and allow his linebackers to play linebacker without having to blitz all the time. Without having to blitz to stop the run, without having to blitz to get pressure on the quarterback, because as the season wore on, as guys got worn out, it became more and more difficult to get to the quarterback. It became more and more difficult to hold up against a solid running team, which would often lead to getting off to these fast starts, but wilting really quickly and just getting overwhelmed and getting avalanched, as I like to say, and actually getting beat. South Carolina, the worst defeat of the season for this team, margin of victory-wise. That game was one of those type avalanche games where you had a really good defensive plan first, and your defensive line just wilted. Same with LSU. Same with Tennessee. You get off to a great start in all 3 of those games. All 3 of those games resulted in a loss. So that was something that had to be addressed. That was a big area of concern, big literally and figuratively, right? It was a big area of concern. And so Clark Lee did a really good job of evaluating this. I think he did a really good job at making sure the guys that you had in the room already were going to be able to develop at an acceptable rate, and B, going to add depth pieces from the transfer portal. Now, some guys you probably had to take a little bit of risk on and see, okay, what, they have some qualities that we like, but ultimately we're going to hope that they come in and those qualities are going to be able to put on the forefront. So, and I think so far most of that has been true. And so what I'm most excited about is this. When you read these practice reports, when you read the scrimmage report, when you look at everything, all the information that's coming out about the scrimmages and about how practices are going, the defensive line is proving that they can be dominant. Now, are they dominating the offense? No. Why? Because iron sharpens iron, and the offensive line is actually responding. So having a dominant defensive line is also putting our offensive line to the test and forcing them to respond and forcing them to really step up to the plate. And they have. So I think your net benefit is your entire offensive defensive line units are going to be good top to bottom. They're going to get great reps. They're going to prove that I think these competitive reps are beneficial. I think the iron sharpens iron theory is proving true with Vanderbilt right now. And Clark Lee has been very, very pleased with the competition that's going back and forth with these two units, right? The defensive line, they win one day, they win a couple of days. The offensive line comes back, they win a couple of days, so on and so forth. I think the defensive line has had the upper hand, but then again, you have an offensive line that's trying to gel. They're trying to learn protections. They're trying to learn how to communicate with each other. And like I said, there's a certain skill that's unique to offensive line to where it seems like they are speaking telepathically when it comes to picking up pressures and things like that. They haven't gotten to that point yet. They're still trying to get to know each other for the most part because they're all portal guys. They're all brand new. They're all learning this thing, and they're all learning the flipping of sides and stuff like that as well. So it's a little bit the learning curve at the beginning for the offensive line is a little bit difficult. So that's why I think a lot of the reason why this defensive line's ahead is that reason. And they're good, they're talented. That's another reason. But this is something that I think having a good offensive line, good physical veteran offensive line, although they're not veteran to Vanderbilt specifically, but they are veteran guys in that they have played many snaps of college football. And they got that experience, and so they know how to work. And this defensive line knows how to work. So they're finding guys left and right on the defensive line. They're finding what you're finding is the interior push, the interior pocket pressure is probably within the passing game, I think is going to be the most valuable thing for this defensive line. You know, being able to put in guys like Jaylen Stone or Nikhil Jefferson, being able to get pressure from Aaron Bryant and Zaylen Wood on the inside, or if you want to go some speed. Like, I think they have a lot of versatility too, and that's a big thing. And it's going to allow Steve Gregory, the defensive coordinator, to be very, very creative. And then Hayden Bray comes in. He's the Oklahoma transfer. He had a sack in the scrimmage. I mean, this group is really stepping it up as far as getting that inside pressure. They're stingy against the run. They've been pretty dominant in that category, and this Vandy offense hasn't really been able to get much going on the ground for a lot of reasons, but this defensive line performing well is a big reason. So, you know, it's just things that you can look forward to with this group. Of course, Yinlin Otara and Glenn Seabrooks are probably going to be your incumbent starters. Those guys will be rotating pretty frequently. So honestly, this may be a situation where it doesn't matter really who starts, because a lot of people are going to play significant minutes and significant snaps. And so you're going to get some really good rotational guys. You're probably going to get 6 guys that can rotate, and then some creative sub packages as well, depending on situational stuff. And based on, like, maybe against Tennessee, you get a faster defensive line that can really get pressure on the quarterback because they may not be able to run much. But against like Texas, you may, or against a run heavy team like Alabama or LSU, you may want to go bigger. It just depends on the situation. It depends on scouting. But the gist of it is this: the offensive line has been a great practice partner with this defensive line, in the fact that no one side is dominating the other. And that's actually a good thing. that is actually something that you can look at and say, okay, we are happy with that result. We are happy that this is happening. The defensive line is, deep, talented, and I think a lot of guys are performing the way that Clark Lee, Steve Gregory, and this defensive staff had hoped that they would perform. And they're giving, and some of these rotational guys are giving things. They have certain types of skills. I sound like Liam Neeson and Taken, but they have a certain set of skills that makes them dangerous for opposing offensive lines. Offensive lines that don't know who they are and what they do as deeply as our offensive line does. So it's what that means is this, how that translates is it's going to be hell on offenses, right? They're going to have trouble blocking those guys on the interior. And then you have Jaylen Wood, then you have Corday Sidnor on the defensive ends. Like, you have guys like that. I mean, just across the board, like, you have guys that can go. You have edges that can go and help this thing out, and you have linebackers that are going to fill any run lanes, any gaps, anything that these defensive line can't do. You're going to have a linebacker room that also has great depth. So this defensive line is exciting. They're going to anchor this defense. They're going to be dominant in the trenches. And I think this has been probably, as far as defensive line play, I think this might be the best defensive line that Vandy's had. I'll have to go back and go back through the olden days, the golden days of Vanderbilt football, and see what they had in those days. But I'm pretty sure if you look at it, this is probably on paper without seeing the production yet. Is going to be, I'm predicting it's going to be the most productive and most dominant defensive line room the Vanderbilt's ever had. So that's exciting for everybody involved watching Vanderbilt football. So I said something about the linebackers. They got depth. We're going to talk about it next, though. But first, it's time to talk about Game Time. Yeah, man. We've all been there. Logging on early, waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show that you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Game Time comes in. Game Time makes getting tickets, concert tickets, that is, even faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% off with their killer last-minute deals. I mean, just think about it. And being in Music City, if you open Game Time, like, the entire app is going to be tickets for this, that, and the other at the Ryman, at the Opry, at Bridgestone, at Ascend Amphitheater. Like, all those places are great concert venues that will be used on any given night, especially during the weekend. So go to Game Time and find the best deal on whatever show you want to see. And if you're tired of all the endless scrolling and you're tired of finding the best deal, well, the Game Time zone deals are the best that you can get, because they pick the seats in the section that you want, and you have to just tell them the section. They'll pick the best seats available. And if you want to know what those seats look like before you click purchase, the app shows you a panoramic seat view, so there are no surprises. And with Game Time, the price you see is the price you pay. There's no hidden fees. And if you're worried about, well, what if plans change? Because that's life. Plans change, things happen, all that good stuff. Game Time Guarantee has your back with cancellation protection and more. So take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Thanks for making Locked On Vandy your first listen each and every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If you need a second listen, Chris Cordy, Locked On SEC, go give it a shot. With all the camp coverage, man, you cannot go wrong. And you can't go wrong in the SEC family of shows. There's 15 other great SEC shows, 16 if you count Locked On SEC, and each team is represented to the fullest. It's the best Locked On family that exists in this network. I promise you, there's no better family than the Locked On SEC family. I can tell you that with certainty. Anyway, We talked about how Vanderbilt's defense is going to be dominant in the trenches. This defensive line is as best as I've ever seen. They're exciting. But this linebacker room is right up there with them. And I guess you could count the star position in that as well. And anything that's going to be able to stop the run, get pressure on the quarterback, all that stuff, I think is going to be very super, super exciting. And when you look at it, it's just the entire front seven. I think, this is the deepest it's been. And this is something that is very, very exciting with all that. And I just can't shake that feeling of like, man, this is awesome, dude. Like, this is something that, you want to watch this. Like, this defense is going to be outstanding. So I'm very excited about this group, this linebacker group. You have Bryan Longwell that just got added to the Bolitnikoff, or not the Bolitnikoff. That's the wide receiver. Bryan Longwell does not play wide receiver. No, Bryan Longwell is tabbed to the Bednarik Award watch list, right? That awards the best defensive player of college football. The past winners are Travis Hunter, Peyton Wilson, Will Anderson, Jordan Davis, and Zaven Collins from 20 all the way back to 2020. So that's the best defensive player. So it's regardless of position. It doesn't matter what position, anywhere on the defense. So Bryan Longwell has been named to that watch list. First of all right, Langston Patterson. Like, you kind of just forget about him because, like I said, he is very, very unexcitingly great. Like, he just does his job, and he does his job to the point where you just don't really recognize him. He just makes the plays, and he's just there. And he does nothing exceptional because he's so anticipatory. He's just Johnny on the spot. It makes it seem like he's just not an exciting player. He's just blah, because you don't ever hear about him. He doesn't do anything like that would turn heads or that would be worthy of like social media stuff. But what he does do is he makes every play in the book. He runs sideline to sideline. He's there. He's making all the calls. He's in the coverage. He's getting pressure. He's making open field tackles. He's making tackles in the A gap with the fullback bearing down on him. I mean, he does it all, man. And I have to give him his props, man, because he gets overlooked easily. And I can see why. I can see exactly why a guy like Langston Patterson get overlooked. He's a known commodity. We don't have to talk about him. We know what he's going to bring to the table. We don't have to. And I think sometimes that gets lost in the shuffle. So I want to give him his due props because that's what he is. He is just a dude, man. He's a dog, man. He's going to get after you, right? He's going to flat out get after you. And he's going to be the leader of that group. He's going to be the leader of that group because he knows what to do and he can rally the troops, and he's just a guy. He's just that type of guy. He's a leader on the defense. He's kind of like Brandon Fontenot. From what I take away, he's kind of like that Rambo type leader where he's going to be like Brandon Fontenot, where if this were Rambo, he would be Rambo popping up out of the bushes in the jungle with the knife between his teeth and boom, gotcha, bad guy, gone, right? And you don't even know what hit you. That's kind of what Langston Patterson. That's how I see Langston Patterson, right? And that's exciting for Vanderbilt football. Then you have Bryce Cowan. You have Bryan Longwell, you have Nick Rinaldi, 4 guys right there that are absolutely outstanding for Steve Gregory. And what's exciting the most is you got some creativity there with Nick Rinaldi, especially. Like, he's using that with Nick Rinaldi to kind of move him all over the place, right? They're gonna put him in different places. They're gonna use him in a variety of different ways, and that's exciting, right? And it's I think it allows a defensive coordinator who's trying to find his way to be able to call these defenses and to be able to feel like he can make these calls and not put this team in harm's way, and not feel like, okay, well, if I put this guy on the field, like he's like, there's something to like people having specific roles. I think there's something to that. I think there's something for that. And I think there's situations where that is phenomenal. I think at linebacker, I think it gets a little tough if you have specialized guys at linebacker, because I think it's such a versatile position by nature based on what you have to do, that I think you have to have all-around guys there. So if you don't, I think it makes it a little tougher for you to play at that position. Like, I think these guys can do some different things. Like Bryce Cowan, Bryan Longwell are athletic. They can cover. They can also play downhill. Langston Patterson, not quite as big as those guys, but also just as athletic and can do things in the pass game. So that's something that I think is good for that. But these guys have versatility, and defensively, I think that leaves you a lot of wiggle room, a lot of open possibilities to make various calls and to make various calls and pass pressures, pass coverage, blitzing, like whatever the case may be, just changing up the front, just, a little bit of deception here, maybe, just a lot of different possibilities that you can do with these guys. And that's exciting. And when you have great depth, you can do that. You can play a combination of guys. Like if a guy gets banged up, like let's say Langston Patterson gets banged up, there's not really a drop off, right? Or Bryce Cowan gets banged up. I mean, you got guys there. And some of these freshmen are also like Austin Howard and Jameson. Those guys are going to be great too. They're going to be kind of buried this year, but I think those guys have possibilities to be great in this system if they stick around. So this group is going to be very versatile. This group is going to be, and based on the scrimmage, they're proving all of that, right? They're actually showing that on tape. It's good for me to say that. It sounds cool for me to say, oh, this group's going to be versatile. They're going to be able to run down hills, just given all of like the buzzwords or whatever. But they're actually doing it. They're actually showing it on the field. They're making interceptions. They're stopping runs at the line of scrimmage. They're playing downhill. They're playing in pass coverage. They're not blitzing a ton in practice, but when they do, obviously they'll be able to get there. And they're just doing whatever. The edges are getting pressure. Miles Capers has been kind of banged up, but that's okay. They're finding different options there. Jaylen Ruth, Marcus Hanby playing at the star position. Brandon Fontenette's just kind of been off to the side a little bit of load management. Probably got some camp legs going, and they're probably trying to just keep him fresh for the season, which is fine. But he's going to be phenomenal with that star position, and they're just developing depth. They're seeing what they have behind him because there might be situations where a couple, they might have 2 stars in the game. There might be some there's some wiggle room. There's some things with this personnel packages that I think you can do with the linebackers and /edge and /stars that are going to allow you to have a lot of versatility, which means no matter who you put in the game, they're going to make plays, and that's the most important part. So very exciting about that as well. Very exciting about having some award winners potentially line up there. And at the linebacker position, the depth is there. The depth is outstanding. This defense, man, they are loaded, man. I don't think people realize that. But people don't realize a lot of things about Vanderbilt because it's Vanderbilt. People aren't going to talk about it. But I am. I'm going to shed the positive light on there. There's a lot of people that are probably down, like, oh, they got us figured out. Oh, blah, blah, blah. Not me. I see it, man. I see the depth. I see the versatility. I see the athleticism. I see a team that in a very difficult league still can overachieve, but in a very difficult league, it may the wins and losses may not be all that you need. It may not be all the context you can judge this team based on, right? It may not be enough context is what I'm really trying to say to be able to judge this team, whether or not they were a success or not. I'd love to go 12-0, but it's a tough league. It's a tough schedule. But Vanderbilt can do it. We can do it. I promise. Speaking of defensive backs, there's some fierce competition going on there, especially at the safety position. Dontae Carter, what's he doing? Is he making some noise? We're about to find out. Let's talk about it next. Locked on Vandy, wrapping up the show. Thanks for making us your first listen. Shout out to you everydayers. Shout out to whoever is here, whoever happened to walk by. I appreciate you. Man, this team is exciting, man. This defense is going to. Honestly, I think they're going to be nasty. I think this defense is finally starting to look like they're finally starting to take shape as an SEC defense. They've had SEC defense pieces, right? They've had those guys in place. They just never had a full defense that was pure SEC quality with depth. And I think they have that. I think they have, from the defensive line to the edges, to the star position, to the inside linebackers, now to the defensive backfield. I think you have every single unit has quality depth and quality competition. And with quality competition comes quality. The key word in that is quality, because it's quality competition. You're building up quality skills, quality technical skills, quality mental skills, and quality competition skills. All of that is encompassed in the word quality. And all that is also encompassed in these two words, quality competition. And when you have that on the defensive line, at linebacker, at safety, at corner, you have guys that play up above their level, right? Colby Taylor was essentially, as far as careers go, was dead and gone. He was a walking 15-yard penalty. He stepped on the field as a 15-yard penalty. That was guaranteed. Now, you get a little competition over there. Oh, not so fast. Colby Taylor's like, hey, wait a minute. I'm still in this. Jaylen Lackey lost some ground. But you know what he did? He bounced back. Now he's back in the thick of it. He's saying, no, not so fast. I'm in it. Right? Dontae Carter, too small. Not good enough. Not fast enough. Not as good as CJ Hurd. Not as good as Marlen Sewell. Not as good as yada, yada, yada. He said, not so fast. I'm in it. Right? And you have these freshmen, Davin Chandler, Carson Lawrence at safety. They have something to say. Carson Lawrence has something to say about his chances of playing next fall or this fall. Like, there's some guys that you don't need to count out, because either they're going to be on the rotation, they're going to be on special teams, they're going to make a difference somewhere. Carson Lawrence will make a difference somewhere, somehow, at some point for this team. I'm not even going to say on defense. For this team. Somebody is going to make a play. A lot of plays. You're going to have a lot of options. You're going to have a lot of things. You're going to have a lot of opportunity for these defensive backs. And you, like I said briefly in a previous episode, you have a lot of options. You have a lot of variety of talents and skill sets back there, especially at the safety position. You have a lot of combinations that you can do, depending on how things scout out, depending on how teams are playing you, depending on, like, kind of at the end of camp, who's really doing the most well. It's a battle, man. Dontae Carter, CJ Hurd, Marlen Sewell, Carson Lawrence, they're all battling for spots, man, for two safety spots. And it's a battle, dude. And they're challenging each other. It's not one of those, well, we got to pick somebody. Somebody's going to start because somebody has to start. We don't really like anybody. It's not one of those type of competitions. No. Like, you're reading, oh, CJ Hurd did this, this, and this. Okay, well, Dontae Carter answered with this, that, and the other. Well, CJ Hurd struggled here, but he did this well. Dontae Carter struggled here, did this well, right? You're seeing those reports. You're seeing things happen. Are these guys making mistakes? Yeah, absolutely. They're probably getting burned at some point. If you're a defensive back and you haven't gotten burned, guess what? You haven't played, right? This defensive line is getting blocked at some point. They're getting destroyed at sometimes in the run game because the offensive line's good. These corners are getting beat because the receivers are stepping up, right? You know, it's just everything is just building. They're building each other, which is great, right? Dontae Carter could have a starting spot. He's really making a push, all right? But overall, it's great for the team that he's having this great competition. Quality competition makes quality team. All right, it makes quality players, which makes a quality team. You have competitive toughness, competitive spirit. You have skill building. You have those things. The wide receivers have to answer when they get dominated, and they do. The defensive backs then have to answer again. They do. It's just that back and forth that Clark Lee talks about has been outstanding. And this has been probably one of the most competitively sound, most competitive training camps that I've seen in quite some time, especially with Vanderbilt. They are flat getting after it, and that's what you want to see. And the defense is benefiting from it because they have a lot of guys returning. The offense is benefiting from it because these guys are pushing them. These guys are pushing them, and they are responding, which is great. Because when Alabama's pushing you, when South Carolina's pushing you, when Virginia Tech's pushing you, Tennessee's pushing you, so on and so forth, you damn better respond. And this is what they're working on. And I love it. They're going to be great for it. So that's all I got. We had to get defensive there for a minute because they needed their love too. They needed to understand, and people need to understand that, hey, it's not all Diego Pavia. It ain't all Eli Stowers. You have a lot of award winners on this team. You have guys like Jordan White. He's up for the Remington, and that's the nation's best interior offensive line, which is really just more of a center, right? You have the John Mackey Award, which you get Eli Stowers in the John Mackey Award watch list, which is not surprising, and you get obviously Bryan Longwell to the Bednarik Award watch list to add to the laundry list of awards that these guys are already nominated for and on watch list for. So it's an exciting season. You got a first-team All-American in Eli Stowers. You got everybody on these watch lists. Man, this is an exciting team. Grab your popcorn, man. And if you think I'm crazy for getting too hyped up, then I don't know what to tell you because it's exciting. I want to be excited. I choose to be positive, choose to be excited. If you don't like that, well, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. Right. But thank you for listening is what I'll tell you. Okay. Thanks for your feedback is what I'll tell you. Okay. But I'm not going to pump the brakes. I'm excited about this team. And that's just the way it is. Until next time, anchor down, behave yourselves. Peace.